Hi, I'm Natalie, and for my critical thinking paper, I chose Demi Lovato as my celebrity. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in 2012. She is a great candidate for this paper. I think she talks a lot about her struggles with mental illness. She's super open about her story and her history and everything that she's dealt with, and I think that's really awesome. She is campaigning for mental health awareness, and yeah, I think she does. It was really fun researching her. So I'm just going to jump into the multi-path model and the different dimensions. I started with the biological dimension, which is the genetics and the brain anatomy, biochemical process, and nervous system functioning related problems. So Demi's dad wasn't really around, but she talks about him suffering with his own mental illnesses. The one that she really stuck on was addiction. And I think that's interesting because she also shared that she had suffered with addiction in her early teen years. Addiction like alcohol abuse and heroin abuse as well. I don't know what her dad had addiction-wise suffered with, but I think that genetically that's something that she definitely could have inherited from him. She talks about how that is something that started and then developed into anorexia and bulimia. So that was something she talked about before her actual bipolar disorder was diagnosed. I think that those things like anorexia and bulimia also take a huge physical toll on the body, and that is something that could have affected her development into bipolar disorder. I'm just going on a limb there, but you never know. For the second dimension, I went into the psychological dimension, which deals with personality, cognition, emotions, learning, coping skills, self-esteem, values, and early experiences. So Demi Lovato has been a child actor all her life. She started on Barney and Friends when she was probably 8 or 9 or something. And she talks about how she was always known as the fat star or the fat kid or whatever, the fat Disney girl, and it's just so, well, it's sickening really, but it's something that affects you psychologically at such a young age. You're already under this immense pressure being on television and acting and working at such a young age, to also have this worry about your physical appearance, that's gotta do some damage, and so she developed anorexia and bulimia because of this, and I think that's also where her bipolar disorder could have come or stemmed from as well. And not only was her self-esteem crumbling under the spotlight, she also suffered immensely under this, the way she coped and her emotional skills. The way she actually got sent into rehab was she got into this fight with one of her backup dancers when she was on tour with Camp Rock, and she just didn't know how to cope with this disagreement or whatever that she was having with this dancer, and she just physically attacked her, and that's what sent her into rehab and ultimately gave her the diagnosis of bipolar disorder. So moving into the third dimension is the social dimension, and this one deals with family support, social support, sense of belonging, love, and community. She talks about her mom and her sister always being there for her and always having, her back and just being that foundation for her, but she also didn't grow up with a dad, which could have had some effect on her mental illness, but I also think the fact that she was a child actor, your community is always changing, and it's so hard to make friends, I think, in that sort of atmosphere. And so I think that is something that could have really affected her mental health socially, was that she just struggled with being in that spotlight. And so The fourth dimension is the sociocultural dimension. This area is concerned with race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, culture, and ethnicity. So she is Latino, but I don't think that has anything to do with her mental illness. She didn't get into that, at least. I mean, it could have, but I'm just not familiar with that information. But I do think the fact that she was a female, I think there's a lot of social pressure on the way we look and our appearance, and I think that could have definitely affected her her development into anorexia and bulimia and possibly even the addiction. I think that is something that definitely took a toll on her. I think that also her mom, she said growing up her mom was a Cowboys cheerleader, which I think that sort of culture in the household could have been tough on your self-image. I think that's definitely a pinpoint to where some of that stemmed from. She didn't say anything about that, but I'm just concluding that because I can only imagine the kind of atmosphere, like your mom is so concerned about how she looks and where, like how she's portrayed, that you kind of develop that as well. She grew up in a Christian household, but it doesn't say anything about that affecting her diagnosis or development into bipolar disorder. I do know that she has been leaning on her Christian beliefs a lot after rehab and during rehab. It seems like that's been a big help for her, and she has a tattoo just so that she knows kind of like where she comes from, and it's got a cross and everything, and so I think that's really cool. And yeah, I had a really good time looking up everything about Demi Lovato and learning a little bit more about how she fits into all the dimensions in the multipath the multipath model. It's really good. Thanks so much for listening.